the School of Astrology. Today we're looking at the aspects table. This video has been requested by our community. The topic has been nominated by Nene. Thank you very much. So now, in what types and forms and shapes do the aspects tables come? Now here is one type of shape. Then you can also find it like this in a very low resolution on the generic charts on Astrocom. And here is also one that we find on Astrocom that gives you all the details with the type of aspects for all the planets in connection with all the other planets, the types of aspects that they have, the degrees deviation, and whether the aspect is going to become exact or has been exact already. So we're going to look at this in a little more detail just now, how to read it. But first, we want to show you where you would get this type of precise aspects table. Okay, so if you go on astro.com, you click free horoscopes, and there you see chart drawing ascendant. You click on that. And here appears your chart. It's some random chart now. And here you see on the left to the bottom, you see this triangle chart. This is a very generic aspects table. If you want a little more detail, you can click on additional tables. So if you're not a subscriber, this will be still free of charge. And you'll get to this PDF chart. And if you scroll down a little, you have here a very detailed aspects table that we are now going to use in this video. So you may wish to draw your own aspects table and have it next to your device so you can follow along and compare the contents. All right. So now let's look at an example. Here we have one sample aspects table. And the first aspect that we're going to look at is one aspect between the Moon and Uranus. All right. So in the yellow bracket, you see first the symbol for sextile, the little star. Then you see a minus, then 0 degrees, 18 minutes, and an A. So what does this mean? So we have a sextile. Those two planets have a sextile with each other, so they are around about 60 degrees from each other. Okay. For more details on the aspects, you may wish to watch our specialized short video on reading the aspects and all the interpretation around it. Then you have a minus. You see certain other degree numbers without the minus and others come with a minus. So what does this mean? The minus means the actual aspect is smaller than it would be when it is precise. So the sextile is a 60-degree aspect. And now this is 0 degrees, 18 minutes smaller than 60 degrees. So basically, the degrees would be 59 degrees, 42 minutes, exact angle between the Moon and Uranus. So it's still a very exact aspect. Typically, we would allow, with the Moon involved, up to 5 degrees deviation. So we're well beyond that. So a sextile you could use between 55 degrees and 65 degrees of aspect angle when the Moon is involved. Otherwise, it would be 3 degrees deviation recommended. So, all right, now we have a very exact angle, and we know with the minus that aspect is a little smaller than it would be when it's precise. And now you have also the distance, like it would be 18 minutes smaller than the regular aspect of 60 degrees. And then you still find the A here. A stands for applicative, as opposed to S, like separative, right? Applicative means that those two planets will form an exact aspect. And the S would mean that they did form an aspect in the past. So The exactness is already over if you have an S. If you have an A for applicative, the aspect will become exact. Okay, now let's look at another type of applicative aspect, like, for instance, with our Mars here in a square, we find a square here, to Jupiter, right? So Jupiter and Mars have a square with a 4 degrees 08 minutes distance applicative. So we see that in general, if two planets would form an aspect that will become exact in the future, so is an applicative aspect, so it's not yet exact, will become exact, how can it be that the aspect is bigger, because now we don't have a minus here, is bigger than the exact aspect distance? The aspect distance of a square is 90 degrees. Now here, seeing that the minus is missing, we have an aspect distance of 94 degrees and 8 minutes. How can this be? So this is another type of applicative aspect that you can find if one of the two of them has been retrograde previously. So they did form an aspect, and one of the two became retrograde and now is prograde again. So to help you with working out whether they move into an aspect or out of an aspect, and whether the aspect has been smaller or bigger in the past, this table will shortcut this for you. So this just would tell you that there must be some retrograde motion involved, right? Because those two planets now have 94 degrees distance, but move into the exact aspect, right? So to recap, a square with an applicative aspect, so it's going to be exact in the future, and the aspect is bigger than the regular 90-degree angle of a square would be. Typically, we have to say that the general recommendation would be to use only up to about 3 degrees between planets, unless the sun or the moon are involved, because otherwise it will be difficult to feel the aspect. But as you can see here in this table, we even have up to 7, and sometimes you also see 8 degrees deviation. So we don't actually recommend to use those because it will water down your chart to an interpretation that may not be felt. So you may wish to stick to like shorter, it's called orbis, shorter deviations, smaller deviations from the actual exact aspect. So now here, as another example, we have a trine between Saturn and the rising. So the trine is bigger than the actual trine would be. So a trine is 120 degrees, and this is an aspect bigger than a trine, so it would be 122 degrees and 54 minutes. Okay. And so now this is the classic example that the aspect is already bigger than it would precisely be, like 120 degrees for the trine, and this is 122.54. So a separative aspect is the one that was exact in the past and is now fading out. So this is a natural example. And now here's another example. We have an aspect between Venus and Neptune. It's a sextile, as it's indicated in this box. Then the aspect is smaller than the sextile would be by 32 minutes smaller. So it's 60 degrees for a sextile, and this would be then 59 degrees 28 minutes. So the aspect is smaller than the exact one, which would be 60. And still it is separative. So this is an indication that one of the two was likely retrograde. So that's why still, even if the aspect is smaller, they would move out of the exact aspect despite that it's smaller. So one of them is likely in retrograde motion. So that's why the aspect is separative at the moment. Okay. And so like this style, you can work through your entire chart and figure out what is the relation between all the chart elements, planets, sun and moon. All right. But now there is one more thing that you may wish to consider that we haven't touched on in previous videos. So let's mention this here, seeing that we're already dealing with it. Now we have the applicative aspects, which will become exact in the future. And we spoke about the separative aspects that were exact in the past and fade out now. So how do you interpret this? The applicative aspect typically, now be it in a birth chart or in a transit, both have the meaning that the issue that is indicated by this aspect and by these two planets and their placements in the houses and the house rulership and so on, so the interpretation will become reality. It has to be lived in this life. So irrespective what type of aspect this is, an applicative aspect will be lived, will be felt, right? Because it hasn't been felt in this life. It will have to be experienced at least once in this life. If you find in your birth chart separative aspects, they would address a phenomenon depending on the planets involved and house placement and so on. So you get your interpretation, and it's now a separative aspect, then you know this doesn't necessarily need to be lived in this life because the experience has been incorporated or has been made previously. And so it's our choice to drop this theme from our life. So if you find some more troublesome or difficult aspects, then a separative aspect would indicate for you that it would be easier to be dropped than an applicative aspect. An applicative aspect you would need to live, and the best thing is to incorporate the learnings the first time you have it. So to be prepared, to understand the message, and to then be able to drop it, because from then on you can drop it. So you would at least need to live it once. So this is a very much detailed type of analysis, already very much in depth. But now you've asked for the tutorial on the aspects table, and now you've got a lot more to work on than just the sheer angles and aspects interpretation, right? All right, please suggest more. It's always great fun and inspiration to hear what you're interested in and to answer questions. We hope you find useful content on this channel and appreciate your feedback. Thanks for your comments. Please also comment what interests you, and we'll try to cater to the most requested themes first, like this time. Please subscribe to stay updated with free content every Sunday. Remember to activate notifications to be informed about new content. Thank you for your interest, and see you again soon on this channel.